All right, so moving along, well, we sticking with DC for a little bit again. Um, Superman Red Sun. And
Right.
as I said at the beginning here, well, the beginning of the episode here, I never read the miniseries. Was a three-part miniseries. I only read the first issue last night actually, because I actually kind of watched the movie just literally before we met up online, right? But I just read the
Okay.
first issue because I wanted to get the idea of what's going on, the story, how it's told, and all that kind of stuff. And well, I want you to just kind of tell us what the movie is about. But the story itself is really, really quite fascinating. It's an
Right.
Elseworld story, so it's basically like DC's
Exactly.
version of what if. So, well, what if this character didn't do this, or what if this character was here, and how would that play out, right? So, while it is touching on a lot of like socio and political themes, it's not saying that, oh well, this is kind of the reality of things. It's an assumption. It's a what if, right? It's not
Right.
saying not pointed fingers and whatnot, right? So don't take take the political stuff with a grain of salt. That's all I'll say. But I really dug how they touched on historical events, right? It is especially involving Soviet Union at that time, right? And just the place of a character like Superman in that world. You know what I mean? And I thought that was really fascinating. But from there, now I was really curious to see how they were going to adapt it now to film. And well, yeah, we could now jump into the movie. So, Ricardo, what is Superman Red Sun about?
Right. So basically, it's just a yeah. Also, as I said, also story, a nice little water situation where basically, what if Superman landed in the Soviet Union instead of the United States, Kansas, right? And basically grows up as a different person, completely different individual as the Clark Kent we know. Um, Grows up in with well, effectively Soviet values and Soviet ideas, and he just because of the technology he has and whatever happened, the trajectories of the earth, the world plays out a lot differently. He grows up under Stalin, and he effectively rises in the ranks of the Soviet Union because of his superpowers, and then effectively replaces Stalin to become the leader of the Soviet Union, and so on and so forth. Then he, of course, has a rivalry with our old boy Lex Luthor,
Yes.
and things play out differently. This world, Lex Luthor uh, is with Lois Lane. Characters play out differently in terms of who's the Green Lantern in this world, who's the person in this world, who's this character in this world, and it plays out like that. Who Wonder Woman is allied with, so on, so on, and so forth. And basically, they make a bunch of small changes, but for expediency reasons, they make these changes. And then they
Yes.
make one very big change.
Which
Um,
I was glad because you mentioned this to me yesterday when we met up, right? And I thought that okay, well maybe I had to read issue 2 and 3 to get, but it kind of
right,
happened in the first act, and I was like, holy shit, they did that, and it worked. You know what I mean?
right.
But to
I
be
don't know what
fair,
you're talking about because I don't know what you're talking about exactly because the big change is at the end. Um,
oh, okay. Well, the change I'm talking about involves a certain person power and what Superman did
right.
in that situation. Because in the book, if I'm not mistaken, that person just kind of died of old age and
Oh no, no,
or
yeah, no,
something,
that's a
no,
big
something
change
like
too.
that.
That's a big change too. Right.
Yeah.
No, oh,
Yeah.
right. They make okay, I could argue they made two big changes. All right, so
Okay. But
this 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 thing, what it this in the original comic, the comic is much more sympathetic to the socialist worldview. Because the way how they frame it in this one, it's well, it's more pro like democracy and pro capitalism in this one. They reframe a lot of the ideological perspective because in this they have it where they make it out as if well capitalism was winning the value war, and that is not the case in the comic if I remember correctly. Um, in this, it's more like in this it was like well it was Lex Luthor and them take over, but when Lex Luthor took over, shit was still going bad for the United States.
yes.
Um, so that's how it was really Lex was still jealous and thing, and it's only because of Superman making a mistake with well a big character that shows up later on. It's
Uh-huh.
only him making a mistake with that character. That's the only reason that his worldview is thing. And then the ending does the big validation of Lex Luthor. The ending, but to me, I don't know why they kept it. They kept it open, man. They really try to keep it real pro-capitalist. I was shocked by that.
Right.
The change, the messaging of it and whatnot. So it wasn't a big problem because I thought that was is an okay change.
Yeah.
That's something because as you mentioned, I don't get caught up in the political values of characters in a DC universe. Not really, right?
Right.
So a change doesn't really change the thing. They do change a big character's arc, and again, I get why they change it for expediency, which is Wonder Woman. They change her arc a lot. Big
Yes, yes,
change.
yes. Which
Um,
well to be well there are a few moments in well involving Wonder Woman which they lifted from the first issue actually, but there
right,
is a particular change that they make, and I was like, okay, I can live with that. But how they
right.
expanded it, I thought made sense. Well, essentially with her how she looks upon men and violence that I
All right,
guess
so,
men
again,
are part of.
I think we can kind of spoil it because I kind of annoyed by dancing around this for something like this because of the
Yes, yes,
changes.
yes. Uh-huh.
So so they make out Wonder Woman, I think, outright gay in this one.
Yes,
While she had a relationship with Superman in the comic.
yes.
Um, but they made a change with that.
In the comic actually, what happened? Well, Stalin kind of persuaded, not so much forced, Superman
Right,
to date Wonder Woman. 'Cause the idea is like
right,
if we unite, we will be this big power now. You know what
right.
I mean? And even Stalin
Yeah,
was
yeah,
trying to hook up with Wonder Woman's mom and shit like that. Now.
yeah.
Yeah,
That whole thing, right,
right.
right. But they changed that completely. But and I didn't. It's a change that I get why they changed it. It's a good change in a good sense. But then at the same time, because Wonder Woman arc didn't really fulfill what it could have done because of the ending, that didn't work either. But again, I get why they did. So this, you know what did it? This ultimately suffered from the same problem that All Star Superman had. But because All Star Superman was a longer story, it wasn't as egregious. Which is they made a bunch of changes to squeeze up the narrative, to squeeze in the narrative. They kind of got the gist of it, but it's still because of the changes, it kind of undermined the tone of the whole thing. And so I
Yeah,
didn't have a,
I would agree. I would agree. Hmm.
but I didn't have a big problem with it in this. And so in All Star Superman, it really was a problem. But in
Yeah.
this, not the biggest problem.
True.
Um,
Yeah, cause personally, I still got the gist of what was going on though.
right,
I honestly, I could, like, even though I didn't read the last two issues, I could tell that Superman's dilemma was way better, explored here. Here in the movie, it's more like a decision, and you
right,
can kind of get why he will make that decision because of who he is as a character. But
right,
because the comic book itself spent a lot of time exploring who he is and this his relationship with other
right,
people, it kind of made sense why he would make certain
right.
decisions.
So
Here, it's
I
just
was
like,
wondering,
oh, you push me, okay, well, I'm gonna talk to you a little bit, but you keep pushing me, all right, I'm gonna push back, and
right.
then consequence.
I
That's
was
what happened.
wondering, yeah, I was wondering why they would make. I was wondering if it was a little longer, if they could have like fleshed it out better. That's one issue. So instead of it being an hour and a half, they could have probably pushed it to 2 hours
Yeah.
and make it look a little better. Because they made a big character change as well, which is well they made this not the biggest character change, but they made a okay character change, which is something that we kind of accustomed to at this point, which is Jimmy Olsen.
Yeah, yeah,
Um
they actually made him black in this one. Like, what?
Right, they made
Okay.
him. They kind of did the Supergirl thing. So I don't know, but again, whatever. I already kind of accustomed to it, so it was no problem.
Yeah, but
Um,
how it worked in the end though, I was like, oh, I see where you're going at. Okay, okay, okay. And it kind of
but
makes sense too because all right, so because you're talking politics and all that kind of stuff, they want to allude
right,
to Obama. It's like, okay, well,
right,
this is
right,
what they want to touch on. They want to make it a little modern in this case because the original source material came out in 2003, so they were kind of touching on the war on terror, this idea that, oh, well, we have this big superpower, Superman's
right,
doing this stuff, so let's create our own Superman, which is what Lex Luthor did, called
right.
Superior Man, and let's battle him. So think
That was in the
about it
comic,
like the US and that stuff there.
right,
Yeah, no, it's in the comic.
right.
Yeah,
I thought, yeah, all of that was in the comic. We didn't know that because and effectively he made Bizarro, which I thought worked. That was a good scene.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It was. Mhm. And that fight
but
though was pretty kick-ass though,
yeah,
compared
yeah,
to the
like,
comic. Like the comic just kind of give you, oh well, this is how it turns out, blah blah blah. This one, yeah, you got the fight. You know what I mean? That big epic fight scene that you expect
right,
from a war animation film by now, right? Yeah.
right. And then Wells boy. Right, they made one big change. Well, a big character, even though again it's a good change in my opinion because in the comic it was a little weird, like why they went in that direction with it. But in this, it to me just kind of made sense and was kind of straightforward. So in this one, they made Green Lantern change. They changed his arc. So
Oh, okay.
Green Lantern is just a normal guy in this one. In the comic, it
Right.
had this whole thing with, again, this is what I remember, so but somebody could correct me. But the comic, it had this whole thing with Green Lantern was like, he's kind of like this weird mental person, and he created this whole mental space to survive in prison because he was isolated for years, and it had a whole weird thing about that, and that is why he was like the perfect soldier for the Green Lantern ring, because he could create constructs in his mind so well, and he could train other people because, and it's this whole weirdness. And in this, it's just Al Jordan, he's just a soldier, and they give him the
Yeah.
Green Lantern ring, train with it, and he train others. They replicate the technology, and that's it. I like
Yeah.
that. That's a change. Like I get it in the comic, but like when you look, I remember watching back a second time, it was some real edgelord bullshit. Like, oh, he's such a badass. He created this whole mental palace prison in his mind, and that's why he's such a badass. Like, you could stop.
Yeah.
One
thing I like though, in terms of like Lex Luthor, they keep the whole how easy he could come up with ideas. 'Cause I thought that was really interesting in the comic where he could just take a shower and, oh my god, I came up with an idea of how to do this. And I just created this in a night, you know what I mean? But they kind of continue it here, but not to an insane level how I felt it was in the comic. Like literally every day he was coming up with some new shit there. But what I liked about that in the comic is that, with Superman being in existence, I was like, okay, now my mind is being fueled on. That's what I call it, more and more things. And one day I will have something just as powerful enough to stop you. You know what I mean? So I dug that.
I kind of had a problem with Lex in this. It was a little annoying because I thought they had him doing the whole, well, I'm a genius and I'm seeing 10,000 steps ahead bullshit. I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that kind of thing. But
really was he 10 steps ahead? That Lois said not really.
Yeah,
I didn't see that. I didn't see that personally.
In the comic, it was like Lex was losing, like outright losing, and that is when he started. He was like, even when he became president, and it's only because of the ending that it kind of validated him. But this kind of framed him as mostly a good guy in this one.
Yeah, that surprised me, because I remember there was a moment in that first issue where, after the Superior Man experiment failed, he like gunned down some the scientists involved though. Like literally well, you saw the aftermath, of course, right? Like, holy shit, okay. You know what I mean? But you don't see that at all. They just try to frame him as, and I get once I understand, you know what I mean, Elseworld stuff. Oh, Lex is good now. Well, good, you know what I mean? Shockingly good.
Right. And then we gotta get to the big one. What did they do with Batman? Right? The big change with Batman.
Yes. Well, even though I didn't get to that point, but they cut out the origin story entirely because there was another guy involved, with Superman, somebody who was working for Stalin, who ended up killing these two, this family, this husband and wife, and his son was scarred by that, and he will become Batman, right? So they just throw that out altogether, and they just made him the kid prisoner, or like Gulagna, and they did the same thing with Lana, who was the childhood friend of Superman back then. In the comic, I remember she was just there with your two kids. I was like, oh, you have kids, all right, cool. But this was like, well, she was a prisoner, and it's a great powerful moment where she dies, and that kind of inspires Superman to kind of save the world, right? So
yeah, so they made the change with there. They made some change with Batman because I can't remember exactly what they changed, but it was roughly the same.
But question, he had a group of guys working with him, right? Because I thought he was just doing terror stuff solo.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think, if I remember correctly, other people was inspired by him. When they changed it, I remember it was he started by himself, and then other people became inspired by him to battle back now against Superman. Then it had a whole like group of bat people that Superman take to put that thing in their brain, the lobotomy thing he was doing. And they changed with Batman. I forget exactly what they changed with Batman, but it wasn't like, I know some people hated it as reading, but it was fine for me. I thought it was like, that is exactly
fine. I had no problem with that. I understood where he was coming from. Maybe it's his methods. Maybe he was a little too, like, I don't know. Like, I get what he was going for. Like, he just really wanted to wipe out Superman, but maybe it's his methods or something. So, like, maybe that scene with him and Wonder Woman maybe rubbed some people off. But then again, I don't know if that was in the comic, but I thought that was like a really effective scene, in my opinion. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, so that's about it. Okay, so let's talk about the big sci-fi conceit that it changed in the ending.
Right.
And this kind of validates Lex Luthor at the ending, kind of, but it's a big, weird sci-fi idea that I like the idea at the time, even though it was a kind of goofy sci-fi premise and it's something that's annoying me at times. I thought it was a really clever idea, but I'm kind of glad they changed it, because in some ways it kind of leave things open for, like, if they want to have a kind of sequel to this, maybe if they could, it's a possibility. So spoilers for Red Sun comic, not Red Sun
The
cartoon.
movie. Right.
Spoilers, right? Right. So the big sci-fi conceit at the end of Red Sun is Krypton is Earth, right?
What?
Right. But in the future, Krypton is Earth in the distant future, and Clark didn't go from an alien planet to our planet. He's a future human that came back in time from Krypton being destroyed. And then the big reveal is that that you learn that the lineage of Lex Luthor, right? Eventually, Lex Luthor started calling himself L. So every Lex Luthor's family descendants start calling themselves L. So it's something L, something L, eventually having a person called Jor-El. So Lex Luthor is the
All right.
distant,
Holy shit. Holy shit.
yes, Lex Luthor is the distant ancestor of Superman.
That
So,
is awesome. No,
right,
seriously, that is really, really awesome, Joe.
right. So what going on is like a big weird time loop thing went on now. And it's such a great weird sci-fi conceit. I don't know if it distracts from the story itself, but I just thought it was such a great weird ending, and it was cool. They decided to scrap that entirely, and I do think it's a good call, to be frank. Even though I
All right.
love it.
Well, why? It would have been too much for. It would have been too much
Right.
to adapt, like too hard or
No,
something.
no, not that, because it was done in like a kind of quick month, like quick panel form. It was like a thing to watch.
Okay. Okay.
But what it did, with that is that I thought it would have distract from the story. Because that's what,
Oh, yeah, yeah. Because
right.
to be honest, it does have a kind of, oh, and by the way, the
Right,
aftermath, this is what really went on. Okay, but it kind of
right,
had nothing to do with all the stuff that happened before. I got it.
right,
I got it.
right. And that's how I was thinking about the whole thing. And then ultimately, but the thing is, here's the thing, they could totally make a whole story or comic. And they never write a comic about it, but to me, they can make a whole story about the lineage of Lex Luthor and that potential future of Lex Luthor's, being the distant ancestor of Clark Kent or something
Yeah.
like that. I thought
Dumb
that's pretty
question. This is Elseworld stuff, right? We still with that?
right. Right.
Okay. Because I was
Yeah.
thinking, because if they decide to continue from the Death to Return of Superman with Lex Luthor joining the Justice League, which they still have to continue. Like I was thinking,
Right.
that could have been something to follow up right after Red Sun. Now. But because that Elseworld thing is like, well, forget. Right.
Right. Oh, the thing is, although somebody might have to correct me. I'm not sure if Krypton was it exactly, or is it that it traveled to an alien planet because Lex Luthor's lineage spread out? Somebody could probably correct me. I think if I remember correctly, Krypton was it, right?
Okay.
Right. But anyway, um,
Yeah.
I
But well, other than that, though, just quickly, animation is decent. Me as far as these shows go. I thought that the storytelling, even though yes, they made some changes, I thought was quite effective. It was quite engaging. Had me, on board, checking out what's going on. I like that they kept the whole. Okay, we jumping from year to year. From decade to decade. They maintain that.
right,
Also, but I just wish that they kind of expanded on this explored Superman's dilemma, you know what I mean? Because it was, in this case, it was just like, okay, action reaction, a lot of action reaction stuff, not so much the decision process or the into making those reactions or these decisions. It was just kind of happened just so. The voice acting was pretty decent for the most part. Music was
yeah,
great, but yeah, I do agree with you. This should have been a little bit longer. Um, but then again, I think because of just the style of these shows, because right now the longest film technically they have is the Death and Return of Superman, but that was really two
right,
films that they put together, right? Which is Death of Superman and Return of the Superman, or I think it's Rise of the Superman. This merged into one 2 hour and 45 minutes, I think it was, right? Film it was, right? But yeah, so I don't know if ever they'll ever go beyond that 1 hour and hour and a half runtime mark. I don't know, but they really should do. I really think they should go a little bit further, and especially with a story as fascinating as this, because this is quite a fascinating show. And yeah, they tell it well enough. They do a lot in hour and a half, but still could have been just a little bit longer. Like it needed to be a little bit longer.
Right.
But yeah, the end of the day for it was I thought it was pretty decent. It's not
Yeah, it
one of
was
the
fine.
best DC animated movies I've seen, but it is one of the better
Right.
ones personally. I've seen it a while, but that's just really because of the story, because of the story being as strong as it is. Because of like what Mark Miller, respected Mark Miller, what he put to the table as far as the story goes. Yeah, the story is just so great that there's literally no way you could kind of fuck things up.
Right.
Unfortunately, they did right. It's just that you know they had to shorten things down because of time and pacing and all that kind of stuff. But they could have still have all those great stuff in it, but just a little 10, 15 minutes to really expand on that story. You know what I mean?
Right.
But for what to it, I'll give this a strong 3.5 out of 5, man. This is actually worth checking out. I would say don't go in expecting like a ton of action in it, but it's more story centered than anything else. So don't go in expecting like a ton of fist fights and action stuff like that. Like it's there is action, but it's not about that. It's really about this really intriguing and really unique idea, this unique take on Superman. But because of how iconic this character is, you think the show would have really stressed on, hey, this is really something bad. You know what I mean? What would happen if he just went on the other side? His mindset, his whole ideology changed, right? But hey, at the end of the day, at least you have the source material. You could read that. I actually plan on reading those other two issues. I have a feeling I'm going to enjoy the whole thing as a whole, the entire graphic novel as a whole. But yeah, the movie itself is pretty decent. I would say check it out. So, what's
Right.
your last take and
Yeah.
rating on this
Yeah.
one?
I get this one at 7 out of 10. It's pretty good for me. Again, I was on the fence about a couple of the changes. Some of the small changes I liked. Others, they were okay changes, but they kind of undermine what the general original arc was, and some of the original arcs were quite good. So that's a little annoying, but it was not a big problem for me. As I said, uh, felt they could have just done a little more with this. As I say, if it was like a 30 minutes longer to flesh out some of the better ideas, mostly to do with Batman and Wonder Woman's arc, it would have worked. Because the stuff with Green Lantern I felt was good enough. I didn't have a big problem with the change they did there. But I can imagine some people not really loving this. It was, I won't say I was too let down from this, but even though I was super hyped about it, I wasn't too let down. But just slightly let down. It was still fine.
Right, right. Okay, cool.